Welcome to Library Time with Mrs. Sims. I'm glad to see you today. Yesterday was our first library video, and today I have another one that I'm posting for you. The first thing I want to say is today we're going to look at a book that's about a famous American president. But before we do, there's some things that we need to get adjusted to as we're doing this new format for our library time. Before we get into the story, I need you to get out some paper and something to write with. Remember, you can stop the video at any time that you need to, and you can go back over anything that you need to see. So if you need to get up and you're interrupted for any reason, feel free to go ahead and pause or stop the video. You can go ahead and do that now. If you don't have your paper and something to write with, they're close to you. Now that you have your supplies, please move in closer to your screen so you can really pay attention to the story once we begin. I want you to listen very, very carefully. On today's video, I'll be asking you to stop and use your supplies as I read. Your important questions are not all at the end of the video like they were before, but they are interspersed or sprinkled throughout the story. So you're going to have times that you need to stop the video and write down something on paper. You guessed it, the book I'm sharing with you is about Abraham Lincoln. The book is called A. Lincoln and Me by Louise Borden. And I'm going to go ahead and show you the cover. This is what it looks like. Let me give it a little more of an angle here. We're going to start with a question before we even start opening this story. I want you to write down on your paper. I want you to answer this question. I know that I have kindergartners through middle schoolers who are viewing this. So there'll be different things throughout the video that are catered toward kindergarten, or maybe it's catered more toward other grades. So you're going to need to listen really carefully for this. All right, I want you to write down for me on your paper an answer to this question. What do you already know about President Abraham Lincoln? Please pause the video and write down one thing you already know about Abraham Lincoln. If you are in first grade through third grade, you can write one thing that you know about Abraham Lincoln. If you are in grades 4th, 5th, or 6th, I want you to write at least 3 things that you already know before we've ever looked at this story about Abraham Lincoln. If you need to pause the video, go ahead and do that. If you're in kindergarten, you may tell your parent one thing that you already know or you've already heard about Abraham Lincoln. Some of you may not know anything about Mr. Lincoln at this point, and that's okay. So feel free to pause the video if you need to. Okay, here's the title, A. Lincoln and Me. Abraham Lincoln did not like being called Abe or Abraham, really. He didn't really like either of those names. So the letter A in the title of this book is in line with something that he would have liked. There are 365 birthdays, one for every day of the year. And I have the same one as Abraham Lincoln, February 12th, a day of winter when we both were born. Okay, I want to pause right now for my kindergarten students. February, you know, is a month of the year. Let's go ahead and review our months of the year. January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, say them with me, October, November, December, the 12 months of the year. Could you say them to a parent right now? When February comes, we talk about Abraham Lincoln in class. My teacher, Mrs. Giff, hangs 28 pictures of Lincoln along the hall. We'll all remember him when we get a day off from school. You may have heard about Abraham Lincoln's birthday and celebrated in your classroom, or you may instead have celebrated Abraham Lincoln's birthday with the general holiday that we have called President's Day. Okay, at this time, I'm going to show you all of these drawings of Abraham Lincoln. I would like you to take your paper and whatever you got to write with, and I would like you to draw me a picture of Abraham Lincoln. Kindergartners will do drawings that they will try to draw a picture of Abraham Lincoln. Maybe they'll draw his eyes first, then his ears, maybe a round circle for his head, and then be sure and put a beard on him, because that's one of his most famous attributes, was the fact that his face was very thin. The big word, 5th and 6th graders, is the word gaunt, G-A-U-N-T, and it means that he didn't look like he had much fat or flesh on his face. And I want all of my students to draw, whether you're in kindergarten or all the way up through 6th grade, I want you to draw a picture of Abraham Lincoln. Some of you have seen many other pictures of him, so this is going to be easy for you. Others need to kind of look up here for a little bit of guidance. So I'm going to give you a few minutes right now to work on that drawing. I'm going to give you a few minutes, and you may want to pause the video to give you plenty of time for that. So I'll give you about 1 minute of video time, and then feel free to pause it for as long as you need. Okay, moving right along. Mrs. Giff says we're a lot like old Abraham Lincoln and me. She says I'm as skinny as a beanpole and tall for my age, just like Abraham was when he started reading books. Sometimes I have big, clumsy hands and big, clumsy feet. I never see a wet paint sign until it's too late. Big Butterfingers, yells Holly in her extra loud voice. Big Butterfeet, yells Carlos as he runs to tell my friends. Today we would call that kind of behavior bullying. But I want you to think for a minute, when we're talking about people's hands and feet being large, we know that was something that you would have seen if Abraham Lincoln had walked into your classroom. You would have noticed his large hands and large feet. Right now, I would like you to pull out your paper, and I want my kindergartners and first graders to draw your hands and your feet on your paper. You can feel free to trace your hands and your feet on your paper. You may stop the video to do this activity. You may choose to color those hands and feet after this video is over. Big hands, I say, and I look down at mine. Lincoln had big hands too. Strong hands, says my teacher, strong enough to split rails for a fence and wrestle two men all at one time and put 36 states back together. I think about all those different states like pieces in a puzzle, some joining the North and some joining the South. This is talking about a famous war that we had called the War Between the States or the Civil War, or you may have heard it called the Battle of the Blue and Gray. States where everyone was free, states where some folks were not free. Big hands and a big heart, says Mrs. Giff as we mop up the mess where I've knocked things over onto the floor. Later I hear her tell James and Trish half a nation once called Lincoln many names. They called him gorilla, they called him baboon, and backwards hick. A hick is someone who doesn't know how to do things that normal people would know how to do. I'm going to show you some pictures of some drawings that are real similar to some that you would have found that were made about Abraham Lincoln when he was younger. At recess, Mrs. Giff tells us that people laughed. They laughed at Abraham Lincoln. They laughed at what they called his frontier ways. He didn't know how to behave in a city. At least they thought he didn't. They laughed at his hair, that he couldn't get to comb right and stay like it needed to. They laughed at Lincoln's long, lanky legs. People figured he wouldn't know how to be president. If he didn't have fancy manners, if he'd been poor growing up, Abraham Lincoln has his very own shelf in our school library. There's a lot to say about this man, who had big hands and big feet, who was tall for his age, just like me. For starters, he didn't like to be called Abe. So I call him A. Lincoln, the same as his signature in all those books. Okay, on your paper, I would like you to list as many reasons as you can as to why people thought Abraham Lincoln would not be a good leader or a good president. If you need to look back in the video, you're free to do that. List as many reasons as you can why Abraham Lincoln, at least by some people, was thought not to have been a good leader. Write down as many reasons as you can think of. Why did some people think he wouldn't be a good leader? Okay, we're going right on. If you could ask Mr. Lincoln any question, what would you ask him? Please write down your question now. If you're in kindergarten, please tell your parent what question you would ask Mr. Lincoln. There is a Lincoln. When I'm not even looking on the shiny pennies that jingle in my pocket, he doesn't look like someone who walked barefoot to school. He doesn't look like someone whose mother couldn't write or read. He just looks like himself. He's on pennies today because he's a hero, because he talked in words that anybody could understand, because he told all the slaves, "Now you are free." I think about Lincoln when I'm the line leader at school. I think about Lincoln when I'm reading good books and I don't want them to end. I think about Lincoln when I'm singing in the back row, a head above my friends. I think about Lincoln when I'm out on the playground telling funny jokes and making other kids laugh. And I know when I'm running from first base to home plate, my team is glad that my legs are long and that my feet are big. On the way home from school, I see a Lincoln standing tall and bronze in the afternoon sun. Okay, there are a lot of statues across our country that show Abraham Lincoln. A lot of them are in parks or out in front of libraries because of his love for reading, or maybe in front of the City Hall, which is the main building in a town. Big buttons on his coat, big words in his heart, big hands and big feet like mine. But I wasn't born in the backwoods of Kentucky. And my house in the city doesn't have a dirt floor like Lincoln had. It has a lot of windows. A Lincoln's log cabin only had one window. You see, this young man lived in the city, not out in the suburbs or out on a farm. When I do my homework, I borrow some chalk from my brother Sam. This was strange in this book, and I want to explain it to you. Then I write out numbers on the back of a shovel, the way A. Lincoln did arithmetic long ago. So he wouldn't have had pens or pencils or crayons like you're using right now. What he would have had would have been a different kind of pencil than what we have today. And when you would write with it, it didn't write smoothly like our pencils would, our number 2 pencils that we use. These would be very jerky to write with, kind of like when you're writing with chalk on the back of a shovel. Listen, nobody can be another Abraham Lincoln. That's what my brother Sam says when I tape Lincoln's signature just above my bed. But his birthday's mine too, marked on calendars for all to see. February 12th, a day of winter, to celebrate Lincoln and me. Thank you so far for your patience in we're experimenting with light and getting the lighting right in the different ways that we're making these videos. So I appreciate your patience with that. So I don't mind that I'm as skinny as a beanpole and tall for my age. Someday when Dad takes Sam and me to Washington, D.C., there's only one person I want to see. I won't listen when my brother points to Lincoln's shoes and says, "They're huge." Instead, I'll try to read all those words, high on the wall, above my father's head. They are long and look important, words that came from that very large hand. Sometimes I wish he was really sitting in there working on the problems of the country, saying big things with his words, as he did long ago. This is a picture of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C. If you have not seen it, it is huge. When you walk up to it, it seems even larger than life. My brother Sam is right about one thing. Nobody can be another Abraham Lincoln. But then I figure nobody can be another me. All right, I'm going to show you a few things and then our time will be up. In this book, it listed many things that made Abraham Lincoln a good leader. Remember, a leader is someone who gets people to follow them. How many reasons do you think you can come up with why Abraham Lincoln was a good leader? Please list them on your paper. Two of them that I thought of were that he talked in ways that people could understand, the common people could understand what he was trying to do and what he was trying to say. And he was not afraid to make hard decisions. Those are two attributes of leaders. See if you can write down some other things that you think made Abraham a good leader. Feel free to stop the video if you need to be able to list a few of those on paper. I'm going to keep going here. My next question is, what coin has a picture of President Lincoln on it? Please write the name of the coin. I showed it to you. And then I want you to write down, what state was Mr. Lincoln from? What state was Mr. Lincoln from? We're going to go on to this next section. Feel free to stop anything you need to. If you're in grades 3 through 5, I want you to think for a minute about what it takes to be a good leader for a country, any country. Grade 3 may write me one paragraph. Grades 4, 5, and 6 will have many, many creative ideas. So one paragraph won't give you room to write all the things you'll want to share with me. So grades 4, 5, and 6 may write up to 3 paragraphs. Again, the question is to explain for me what it takes to be a good leader of a country. What things would you need, what things would you need to be able to do to be a good leader for any country, not just our country? All right, I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. I hope you can keep working on this and come up with some good ideas. I can't wait to hear from you about what you're enjoying about these sections. Have a good evening, and I'll see you later. This is Mrs. Sims. Bye-bye.